Okay, so I'm just going to give you an overview of how we operate at the AIC, and hopefully you've already done a bit of research on us at any rate, but it's probably good to sort of get us all on the same page before we get into some of the more detailed presentations. So essentially what the AIC, its mission is to become Australia's, or to be Australia's National Centre of Crime and Criminal Justice, to promote justice, to reduce crime by undertaking criminological research, and also to communicate research. I find that's really important. If you don't actually communicate what you're doing, there's not really much point in doing it. Our ongoing objectives are to maintain relevance as a key centre for criminological research for government, for law enforcement agencies, and also for other stakeholders such as academia, and to continue to conduct and disseminate quality primary and secondary over-the-horizon research. So to identify emerging trends in criminological research, in crime, and to actually convey what's happening to the sector. AIC's been going for 38 years, which is a pretty good record actually for an agency like this. It's called a statutory independent agency, which reports to the Minister for Home Affairs, and what that means is we're funded by government. We're sort of a government think tank, but we have a degree of independence. We aren't like a line agency which is essentially reports direct to the Minister and is essentially given a whole range of very detailed instructions. We have quite a lot of room to do what we want. Our research is independent, our research findings are not doctored, and we can essentially put that research out in a range of ways once we finish it. We also auspice the Criminology Research Grants Program, which used to be called the Criminology Research Council Grants Program, which usually puts out about $350,000 to $500,000 per year into research projects across the country. People apply for those projects and they're ranked, and the best applications get funding. And we also auspice the Australian Crime and Violence Prevention Awards, which essentially recognises local crime prevention efforts across the country. And I chair that board of state and territory representatives, and we get together each August and we look at applications received or nominations received for the awards, and in October each year the Minister for Home Affairs announces the award winners, and they're quite prestigious, and many programs that have won those awards have gone on to some really interesting and good things. Okay, a bit about the AIC. We have roughly about 50 FTE staff at the moment, so 50 full-time equivalent staff, of which roughly 33 would be research staff. So we've got a reasonably large research complement in the agency. At the moment we have 2 staff who've just been seconded part-time to the Australian Mission. This is a new development for us. We're actually going to outsource some of our staff into the law enforcement sector, and the reason we're doing that is, one, it provides them with a research capacity they can't otherwise get, and for us it means we get access to some of the operational law enforcement environments. We get to see what they're doing, to look for joint projects we can perhaps do together, some publications we might want to do together. So it provides, if you like, an enhancement to our existing partnership with that agency, which we think is really important. So it's actually quite an exciting time for us to have these 2 staff off-site at the ACC a couple of days a week, and we're hoping within the first 12 months to actually have turned that into some research opportunities that will benefit the sector and also the AIC. We've also got 1 staff member who acts as the research fellow for the National Drug Law Enforcement Research Fund, another research grants program which is run by police agencies that funds research in the drug and law enforcement areas. And we provide, if you like, academic expertise or support to actually assist the board who makes the decisions around NLOF. So that's another little role we have. So we try to have our fingers in a range of pies beyond our core work. AIC's budget at the moment is about $5.4 million from the Commonwealth, and then we usually get about $1 to $2 million in contracted work. Now the contracted work, I mean, essentially we offer ourselves for hire, if you want to put it that way. State, territory and Commonwealth agencies and governments will come to us and ask us to take on research on a range of areas on a contracted basis. Most of the time that research becomes publicly disseminated once it's finished. Sometimes we work in confidence because the nature of the material is such that it would actually give the crooks too much information to release the material. So for example, if we're doing an evaluation of intelligence gathering processes or of a particular organised crime gang, sometimes we have to make the decision, working with our contractor agency, which is often a police service, to not put the material out in the public domain. But most of our stuff, about 95% of what we do, gets out into the public over a period of time, which I think is a pretty good track record. So we contract research or take contracted research from the Commonwealth, from state and territory agencies such as Attorney General's departments, Departments of Justice, sometimes Departments of Health, Department of Community Welfare, corrections of course you'd expect, but also we take or do contracts in partnership or contracted with academic agencies, in other words universities and colleges. And we also apply for grants from various bodies to actually do research we think should be done as well. And occasionally we also work for the private sector. If KPMG or ANZ Bank wants some work done on, for example, looking at fraud or looking at cross-pavement armed robberies, if we think it's a relevant piece of research, if we think it's got academic rigour or merit to it, we may pick up work for the private sector as well. And we have quite a diverse portfolio pretty much happening all the time. So our stakeholders, those who are really interested in what we do, as you might expect, are firstly our ministers, Minister for Home Affairs and the Attorney General, the Commonwealth Government as a whole, a lot of law enforcement agencies in the Commonwealth sector, the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions, state and territory governments, state and territory police services, academia, the public, a range of NGOs and advocacy groups such as Civil Liberties Australia, and of course we're linked in with international crime groups. I'm a director of the board of the International Crime Prevention Centre based in Montreal. We have links into the UN. So we try and sort of make sure that what work we're doing in Australia where it's relevant for a broader audience actually gets out to that audience through a range of linkages that we maintain across the globe. But of course, as you'd expect, our focus is Australia, or Australasia. We also do some work in New Zealand, and the Asia Pacific region as a whole is again an area where we need to be active where we can. But I'm going to talk a bit about our research program in a broad sense and sort of explain how we do our work and some of our key themes. And then later on you'll hear from a range of our researchers as to some of the specific projects they're running. Okay, so the AIC undertakes research by firstly monitoring trends in crime and criminal justice systems, by building knowledge of offending and also victimisation. What are the risks of victimisation? How do you reduce those risks? What increases that risk? Victimisation trends changing. For example, last year at the forum I talked about a piece of research we were doing looking at overall student victimisation, which arose out of the attacks that were being perpetrated against Indian students across some jurisdictions. I'd actually hoped to be able to present the results of that work to you today. Unfortunately, the release has been delayed until August, so I can't really tell you the outcomes, but it was a really interesting study. And it's a sort of example where it shows we wanted to have a look at a new form of crime, or if you like, a crime that become more evident to the public and to see what was actually going on, really tease out, using evidence rather than just hearsay or media reports, were overseas students as a group being more likely to be victimised as victims of crime? If so, what sorts of crime? If not, how are they compared to the Australian population? All these sorts of factors. And we've actually done that work, and it's going to be quite exciting to release it later this year. Okay, we also try and identify, as I said, emerging trends or change criminal activity. For example, we've monitored deaths in custody for the last 20 years. After the Royal Commission to Aboriginal Deaths in Custody recommended that we do so. What we've found over time, over that 20-year period you'll hear this afternoon, is essentially that where it used to be that Aboriginal people who were incarcerated committed suicide at much higher rates than the rest of the population, that's not the case anymore. And we've actually monitored that trend over about 20 years, but I'll let Matthew Lunn talk to you in detail about what we've found with that program and how it works. We also try to build the evidence base for what works to create an effective criminal justice system and how do we prevent an effective form of crime prevention or crime prevention framework, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a sec. So we cover all these sort of areas in two ways. Firstly, we run a series of national monitoring programs. So essentially each year or each 2 years we put out annual reports or biennial reports on a particular crime type, whether it be homicide, deaths in custody, drug use by police detainees, and you'll hear about homicide and drug use by police detainees in the next presentation, or armed robbery. And we monitor how the crime of armed robbery changes annually by looking at police data. The issue with this sort of work is once you've got 10 or 15 years of data, often the changes each year are actually quite small. So what you want to do is look back over a larger period of time to sort of identify more global trends in particular forms of crime. And then we do a range of primary and secondary research projects using data we get from corrections, from police, from other agencies, from data we collect ourselves through surveying populations or through running quantitative analyses on particular populations. And there are a whole range of things that we might do in the course of the year, and you'll hear some of these today. And how do we select these projects? Well, as I sort of mentioned before, firstly we look at what the Commonwealth Government's priorities are. We look at what the needs of the states and territories are. We look at what the opportunities might be to actually partner up with law enforcement agencies, because often they've got the good data, so you want to actually try and work with them in partnership where we can to get access to that data so we can tell the sector what's actually going on from a research perspective. Clearly we want something that's going to be relevant for the sector and also have academic relevance. We want something that we can say when we've finished it, this was worth doing, this added to the information we know about a particular crime or a particular element of criminal justice. So it's got to have impact, both impact for the broader sector but also policy relevance. As at the AIC being a sort of essentially a government think tank, we want to make sure the stuff we're doing actually has some application. So unlike universities, we're actually much more applied in a lot of our work. We do actually try and I'm not actually having a shot at unis, by the way. But they've got a much more sort of a wider scope of research they can take on. For us, the interesting question is one thing. The second thing is what can we do with this when we've actually got this information? For example, can we change the way corrections looks after prisoners? Can we change the way we prevent graffiti and vandalism in small towns? We want something we can put our finger to at the end of the day and say, this has policy relevance, this changes legislation, it changes policy, it changes practice in some way. If we can get that, I'm a pretty happy man, because that's, I think, important for the sort of work we do. And of course, it also depends on who we've got available, the staff we've got, the expertise that they bring and the areas of interest they have. Our more junior staff are quite generalist in their approach. They get to sort of work on a range of projects, and you'll hear a bit more about this a little later. But our senior staff have specialist expertise. In my area of research expertise is around violence, child protection, domestic violence, homicide, those sorts of areas. Other staff love working on fraud areas, identity theft. Others are cybercrime experts. And of course, if we've got those sorts of people in-house, you're going to try and build projects that actually use that expertise.